Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. On Tuesday, state and federal officials gave an update on the response to Helene in western North Carolina.
The challenges are immense, but our joint response effort has and will continue to be massive. No matter who or where you are in western North Carolina, if you need help, we are working around the clock to reach you.
Our WRAL crews are moving more deeply into the counties affected, where some communities have been completely cut off from the outside world and feel forgotten in the response so far. WRAL's Eric Miller is one of those reporters and joins me by phone. Eric, how you doing?
Hey, Grace, we're doing well. I appreciate you having us.
Yeah, and so how have you and photojournalist Brad Simmons been navigating all of this and, just getting around?
It's not easy. I mean, there's been a lot of progress made since the storm happened. There's been a lot of progress made just since we got here. We got here early Sunday morning. But cell service is still incredibly spotty. Roads are still in some places partially or fully blocked by trees, by landslides, or completely washed out altogether. For the first time today, we were really able to get further outside of Asheville than we have. So we got a sense that a lot of the major routes that folks might be familiar with in western North Carolina, Highway 64, Highway 280, 276, some of those are completely clear at this point, and at times you might not even know anything happened. But when you start to get down a lot of smaller roads, secondary roads, cleanup in many cases there hasn't even started. Still huge trees across the road, still major issues that, under any normal circumstance would have been taken care of days ago. But with this storm, who knows when somebody's going to be able to get there.
Right. And I think the fact that we're even able to talk by phone, that seems encouraging. And then also, as you said, hearing that some of these major roads are starting to get cleared, that really sounds like that's going to be a big relief for folks. How did you guys figure out where to go when you went out on Tuesday?
So we were doing a combination of things. We're scraping social media, looking for any posts there. We're talking to people we already know in the area, and then it's also kind of a word of mouth game too. So many of these communities, they're so cut off. Cell service has gotten better, but it's still not great. So there's a kind of game of telephone that's going on in a lot of these towns, where you show up, you go to the convenience store, or you try to find the person who knows everybody and who might have had a chance to talk with folks who are coming in and out of town, and you say, hey, what have you heard? What's been going on here? What's been missed at this point?
You've been based mostly in Asheville up until this point, just because of some of these travel issues you've mentioned. How are the needs different in some of the communities that you went to on Tuesday versus what you've been seeing in Asheville?
Yeah. So we ended up in Henderson County and Transylvania County, which are to the south and west of Asheville proper. Folks are probably familiar with Hendersonville or Brevard. Those are some of the really popular resort communities in that area that folks in Raleigh and Durham and the Triangle likely have been to many times. That area is farther upstream than Asheville is. So you don't see the kind of shredding floodwaters that we got when you get to Asheville, where entire neighborhoods in some cases were washed away. We've seen two-story houses in Asheville absolutely gone, buildings taken down to the foundation. We didn't see that in Hendersonville and Brevard, but you still saw extraordinary flooding, or at least the aftermath from it. Folks who maybe have heard stories from their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents about places that flooded back in 1916 with that flood, but had never gotten water since. All of a sudden, there were waters in people's homes, in people's businesses, in places that they never expected to have this. And an important point here: none of these people have flood insurance, so a lot of the time, the damage that they're taking is something that they're going to be responsible for paying.
We'll be right back. Eric, where have you seen food, water, supply distributions so far? I know that that's been a big issue in Asheville, which obviously is very populous, but Is that a greater need in some of these smaller areas? Have they been able to get that stuff in?
In some cases, yes. For instance, we saw a distribution site at an elementary school in Hendersonville. That's been very common. A lot of schools have been used as distribution sites that we've seen around the region. But the two biggest challenges really are getting these supplies to people who might not have a way to get to a school or a central location, whether they're stuck down a road that's been washed out, or it might just not have access to a car anymore because it might have been flooded or washed away. The other big issue is folks just knowing when and where these things are happening. We spoke to a woman, Jennifer Kerr, who owns a motorcycle repair shop on the outskirts of Brevard. She was pointing out that she doesn't know whether or not they're under a boil water advisory in that area at this point. She hasn't heard any information from officials or otherwise because they haven't had cell service, they haven't had TV, they haven't had power. So they just have not been able to get any kind of news in. So they don't know where to go to access these basic services. She said they really feel like they're living in a forgotten county here.
How are people dealing with those kinds of challenges while they wait for aid and information?
So in many cases, they're just kind of getting on with it. There's not a whole lot else they can do. Jennifer, she was meeting with friends and family. They were helping her clear out the flooded debris from her business, trying to find bottled water when you can, boil the water when you can't. Some people we talked to today, they're planning on being cut off for several weeks just based on the amount of damage they've seen. So they're working on finding ways to treat water that they can find, and then working on harvesting wood from downed trees to be able to grill out and be able to cook food that way.
Right. It's kind of like going back in time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's sort of involuntary homesteading.
So how are you reflecting? I don't know if you've had time to reflect on just what you've seen so far.
Well, it's hard. It certainly takes a toll. This is a place that is loved by so many people in this state. Most of all the people who live here, but for so many other folks across the country who know and love these locations. And this is damage like they have never seen before. And they understand that it's going to be a years-long process of getting this back to what it once was, particularly in those really hard-hit areas of Asheville, particularly in places like Chimney Rock or Bat Cave or Swannanoa or Black Mountain that really took catastrophic damage here. I mean, it's going to be years, and that's just hard to process for people here and for people elsewhere. One bright spot we did see in driving around some of the areas we were today, sort of the core of some of these communities, Hendersonville, Brevard, those seem to have made it through the storm relatively intact. Both of those communities are built up on hills. So while neighborhoods and outlying areas flooded, the central downtowns didn't. And so there's sort of a toehold to start rebuilding, to keep the economic lifeblood of this area going, which really is tourism for so many of these communities.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. You guys stay safe out there. We appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and obviously the work that all the different responding agencies are doing out there. We'll continue to stay on top of this response. Thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.